Hello everybody, welcome to this online session about the Master in Astronomy at Leiden University. My name is Wouter Schrier, I'm the study advisor of the program. I'm here with two students from the Master's program, Jasper and Sophie. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jasper, I'm a second year master's student and I'm doing the specialization in astronomy research.
I'm Sophie. I've just recently graduated exactly a week ago from the master's program, and I did the science communication and society specialization for 2 years.
Thank you very much. So today's session will have different parts. We will first start with a general introduction from Jasper, who will give a short presentation about the key aspects of the master's program, and he will touch upon some important aspects that are important for you to know as well. Then we will have a short interview with both students, in which we will discuss their experiences in the master's program and some highlights from their experiences as well. And then afterwards, we will end this session with a Q&A with questions from the audience, from you. But also know that you can already ask the questions in the chat itself currently. And then we will gather the questions so that we can answer them at the end of the session. So you don't have to wait until the end of the session to actually ask your questions. So Jasper.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take off. Studying astronomy at Leiden University. So my name is Jasper, I'm the Master Ambassador for Astronomy. And I will briefly talk to you about the Leiden Observatory. The Leiden Observatory was founded in 1633. So that's a long time ago. You can see the original building down right. You can see the current building down left. And in the middle you will see a Google Maps route from the old building to the new building. So the old building is in the city center, and the new building, the Huygens laboratory, is on the outskirts of the city, but it's only a 10-minute bike ride, so it's not that far. And what is typical about the Leiden Observatory is that we have a very supportive community, a very open door policy. So if you have a question to a professor of yours, then you can just walk into their door if they are present, and they will answer your questions. So that's really nice. We have many research groups. There are weekly colloquia which you can attend, so that's also organized. And for master students in particular, we have flex offices. So I think there are around like 4 offices for master students, and you can just sit where you want, use a computer, use your own laptop, or just bring a book. And there are also only other nice study spots like the science library or the new college building. You can also study there or at home if you like. So we have a couple of different courseworks. There is a wide variety of courses. For example, Origin and Evolution of the Universe, which is more theory-based. Then we also have radio astronomy, for example, which is a theory, but also outside-based. So you can see on the down right, there's a picture of us making a paint bucket telescope, which we observed the hydrogen line in the universe just from the back garden of the university building. So that was real nice. There are also courses about exoplanets, modern astrostatistics, and much more. You can find them in the prospectus online. We have different modes of instruction, for example, just regular lectures, exercise classes with teaching assistants and the professor also being present. There are tutorial sessions, for example, for computer-related courses. And we also do a lot of group projects, which is also seen down right. So there is a lot of project work at astronomy at Leiden University. We have research projects in many different areas. For example, you can study galaxies and the structures in which they are embedded, or exoplanets and the formation of stars and planets, and much more. And on the lower right, you can see one of my figures from my first master's project. This was about spectra of stacked galaxies. So we looked at what kind of molecules and atoms were present and what we can learn about galaxies. You can also do an internship in some specializations. Sophie will talk about this sometime later. And there are the specializations for which this is possible are science, communication and society, or business, or education, but this is Dutch only. There's also a study association, the Leidse Fles, which covers the studies astronomy, physics, computer science, and mathematics. And if you become a member, you get textbook discounts, which is really nice. And there is also a master's committee which you can join. They organize events and like borrels for master students. And they also organize business events and career orientation events, so you can think about what you will be doing after that you graduate at Leiden University. There's also a sub-association, the LADF Kaiser, which is an astronomy sub. You get access to the old observatory. You can join observing nights. There are also mentor luncheons that you can join. And for general tips, especially for international students, for housing, start looking early. Sophie can maybe talk about this a bit more in the Q&A hereafter. So look at Facebook groups, kamernet.nl, room.nl. And if you have any questions left, ask them in the Q&A chat, or if you have any questions left after the whole presentation and online open day, you can email me at masterambas, email Wouter at Studadvisor, or email the general master education office at master. So yeah, this was the presentation, and let's get on to the Q&A.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jasper. So you are both students in the Leiden astronomy program, or were students. So you did a bachelor here in the Netherlands. You didn't do a bachelor here.
No.
So can you tell us a bit why you chose this program in particular?
For sure. So I'm an international student. I think I forgot to mention that in the beginning. So I'm originally from Vienna in Austria, and I also was born and raised there, and I also did my bachelor's there. So I did my bachelor's in astronomy, actually, just like you here in Leiden. And the reason why I came to Leiden for my master's is because, first of all, I've always wanted to go abroad, and I thought the master's would be a nice time because it's kind of like a complete set of years. And then I was looking around, and my interests within astronomy lie with cosmology, and that's something that they also didn't have in Vienna that much. So, but it's quite a big focus here in Leiden, and there are a lot of different projects and professors who work on cosmology. So that's one of the reasons why I came here. And then, of course, science communication is quite a specialization, sort of, that is, I think, quite unique in Europe in general. And then also, just the university and the open day and the teaching style, all those things appeal to me. So a lot of different reasons.
Very good, very good. And for you, Jasper, because you have done a bachelor in astronomy at Leiden University, but we also see some students, of course, after doing the bachelor in astronomy, go to other universities as well. You chose to stay in Leiden. Yeah,
I chose to stay in Leiden because I really liked the bachelor. The type of content that we were taught, but also the teaching styles. For example, what I already mentioned, the open door policy. The study is not that big, so you get to know everyone, but it's not too small that you are restricted in what you're doing. So that's also what I really liked. And I already lived in Leiden, and the master in Leiden is very, very well rated. So it was a simple choice for me, actually.
Very good, very good. So you had some expectations, of course, when applying to the master's program. Did the expectations come? What were your expectations, and did they come true in the end?
I think in terms of expectations, I hoped to study in a way that I would learn for the sake of learning and to kind of satisfy my thirst for knowledge and curiosity, and not to kind of go on a grade chase or just tick off some boxes so that I would get a diploma in the end. And I think that certainly came true. First of all, because it's kind of, I think, the general idea here at uni that you learn because all of us are here because we're interested in the topics. So it kind of creates this community that are all here together, and it's really sort of, if you ask any questions, everybody's happy to help, and it's in that sense, I think this expectation certainly came true.
Very good. And Jasper, are you still happy with the?
I'm still very happy with my studies here. So what is a bit different from the bachelor and with the master? In the bachelor, there are more students, and in the master, there are less students pursuing the masters here. And what I really liked about that is that you get a well-knitted community of students, and you you know not everyone by name, for example, but you just recognize everyone. And if you have a question about a course, you can just ask anyone in the master offices. And if they don't know, they will send you to someone who knows. So that's really nice.
Mm.
Yeah. Would you describe it as more of a community feeling in that sense compared
Yeah,
to
I
the
think
bachelor's?
so. I think so, because in the bachelor you have a group of friends. There are multiple groups because the study is just bigger. So you can just find everything in your group, but you don't really talk to everyone in the bachelor's. And in the master, that is really different.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So you are doing the astronomy research specialization. You are doing the science communication. You were doing the science communication specialization. We have the 7 different specializations that you can choose from. What made you choose for the research specialization?
Okay, so why I chose for a research specialization is actually because I couldn't choose between all the other specializations. I knew I wanted to do something astronomy based, so no business studies or science communication or something like that. So what's left is cosmology, data science, that sort of stuff. And although I really liked cosmology, I didn't want to be confined to the courses that the cosmology track that you needed to do for the cosmology track. And for the astronomy research track, you could also choose the cosmology courses, but also choose other courses. So you're less restricted. And because I couldn't choose what I liked, I thought I take the broadest, the widest specialization. So that's my reason.
Yeah, so the research specialization gave you the most freedom to align your own interest within your program.
Yeah, because for example, for the cosmology specialization, you also do 2 projects like my specialization, but one of them has to be cosmology and the other is free to choose. And for my track, you can choose both freely. And I thought, well, maybe if I just wouldn't like cosmology in a master, although I did in a bachelor, then I'm stuck with one cosmology research.
Yeah.
So there was more freedom for me.
Yeah. Okay. And Sophie, you said that you like both the cosmology aspects but also the science communication aspects.
Mm.
In the end, you chose the science communication specialization.
Mm.
How did that work out?
Really well. So I actually also had a bit of trouble choosing. So I actually handed in my application for both specializations, cosmology and science communication. I was first admitted to cosmology, and in a couple of months after my admission, I was like, well, actually, I think I enjoy communicating the knowledge that we have, and I really brings me joy, and it's something that I can see really do later on. So I figured I'd do that, and I was a bit struggling with still wanting to do cosmology. Mm-hmm. But with the science communication and also business and education specialization, what I found really cool is that the way that the program works is basically it's split up in 2 years. The first year is purely astronomy and the second year is your specialization. But then the first year is basically like a research master. So you have no restrictions whatsoever in terms of the kind of directions you go into. And so I basically filled my first year with cosmology and my second year I had science communication. So I kind of cheated my way into doing 2 specializations in some sense. Like
which shows the freedom that you had in the program.
Totally.
In that sense.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, can you tell us a bit more about the structure of the science communication specialization?
Mm-hmm.
How it differs and is similar to the more research focused specializations?
Well, so as I said, it kind of is split up into 2 years. So my family and friends always were a bit like, are you doing 2 masters then? Or it's confusing. But essentially it's just that in the first year you have a research master's. So you are only doing your research project for the entire year and your courses. And then in the second year it's just the science communication track. So I had courses about science journalism, informal science education, for example. And then we also had to do a big group project where we developed a science communication product. I made a visitor gallery about an instrument with my group, for example. And then the second semester is just an internship within the field. Or actually, if you want to do less credits within your specialization, you can even choose to do some astronomy courses in that half of the year, basically. But I chose to do 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, as you were saying, you are doing the research specialization, so you're doing 2 research projects. You are now just started your second project, yes. I think. Can you tell us a bit about your project selection, your first project and your second project, but also about the projects themselves?
Yeah, so for the research master, you do 2 projects. So one in your first year and one in your second year. And you do the projects like part-time, so you start in September and end the first project at the end of July, and you do that for part of the time during your whole first year, and the other part you are doing courses. So it's split up evenly. The first project I did was about spectrums in galaxies, and the way I selected this was, I believe the how you select a project has recently changed, but how I did it was there was a big list of projects that were available, and you could just choose whatever and talk to a professor, or talk to a professor for multiple projects, or to multiple professors, and you just ask them, well, can I do a project with you? And then they said yes or no. So that was really simple. And for my second project, they do not offer a list anymore, because they want you to really pursue what you want to be doing. So you can just reach out to professor and say, well, do you have a project for me? And I would like to do this and this and this. And I believe the new procedure is that there is still a list, but you have to shortlist the projects that you want to take. But the essential idea is still the same. You have a couple of projects which are on a list, or you can just come up with them yourself, and you talk to a professor, and they say, well, I think you are the right student to do this project with me.
Yeah. And how was the form of supervision in your projects? Was it very similar between the two projects? Was there a lot of difference?
Yeah, so I just started my second project, but I think the supervision is the same. At the start, you just there's sometimes your professor is your daily supervisor, and sometimes there is a PhD or master or postdoc student in between. So that is your daily supervisor. So for my first research project, I had a PhD candidate as my daily supervisor, and we met once a week, I think, and if it went well, once every 2 weeks. And if I got stuck, multiple times per week. That was really free to choose and up to me. And with the professor, we met like once a month to talk about what I was doing. And for my second project, this is really the same, although now my daily supervisor is a postdoc, but it's very much the same. And there are also group meetings, so every professor has a group meeting with all their postdocs, PhD students, master students. That's once a week, and for example, the group meeting I'm in now is called Dusty Galaxies, and we need to bring a plot to every meeting, or someone will present what they're doing, and that's really fun, because you also see what other people in the same group are doing. So we all do things with galaxies, but very different things. So it's interesting to see what other types of research are conducted within one very specific research field.
Yeah. And do you feel, because you said that we show plots, are you as a master student also participating in the group? Are you also showing plots, active?
I also show plots. Well, I just started my second project, so I currently have no plots.
Not that many plots.
But for when I was doing my first master's project, if you need to get started, and that might take a while, maybe a month, maybe a month and a half, but after that time, you still have results that are interesting to discuss, and it's not like that your research is less good than research of a PhD or a postdoc. We just talk about what I'm showing, and they give feedback, and I also can ask questions to a postdoc or a PhD student, and also give feedback. For example, how I interpreted the plot. So, for example, if they're showing me a figure that the whole group understands because they have been talking about this figure for weeks, and I'm new, and I say, well, I just don't understand the figure, then something is wrong with the figure, and they should revisit the figure and maybe change some things or give a better explanation, and that also ends up into their papers or theses. But it's you have
very nice.
Yeah.
So you are actually an active member of the group.
I'm actively participating in the group.
Yeah. How was that for you, Sophie? your first project in that sense.
Yeah, so as I said before, I did basically 1 year of astronomy then. So I also did a research project within cosmology, of course. I chose a project also in spectra, but then simulating spectra of very distant quasars, probing the epoch of reionization, kind of the infancy of the universe, and seeing how we could observe those with the LOFAR radio telescope. And so because of this, I was part of the LOFAR research group with one of my professors I worked with, but also part of a cosmology research group with my other professor. So I had a bit of a different experience than you in the sense that I had also two supervisors, but my daily supervisor was also a professor, not a PhD or a postdoc. So I think the dynamics were a bit different kind of in that sense. But it also meant that I was part of two research groups, essentially. And I visited the group meetings, or attended the group meetings of the LOFAR group every week, and then the other group every once in a while. I gave presentations there as well. And I thought it was valuable also to kind of within 1 year see two different groups at the same time, especially because I only did one project actually. But I also felt like I was really taken seriously as a valuable part of the group, and even though it took me personally a bit to kind of overcome the anxiety of asking these types of questions of what do you mean by this plot, I don't understand, I did realize that it's actually appreciated and that I get a lot out of it as well, of course, and learn about different things that people do that are maybe not actually part of any courses or so. Yeah.
And then in your second year, you did the science communication internship. Jasper already showed the difference between the old observatory and the new observatory. Actually, the old observatory is a place where you were there a lot.
Oh yeah, well, it was kind of my second living room in a sense. I was connected to it in multiple different ways. But last semester, so in my last semester, I did an internship at the old observatory, which you saw in the picture. And actually, you saw some pictures of my internship as well. It was the LIGO James Webb Space Telescope and the Nebula image. Because the internship that I ended up doing was to develop workshops within an exhibition at the old observatory with Lego. So I was essentially playing around with Lego bricks for my internship. Was kind of fun. You get a Master of Science for playing with Lego. Not really in any case, but it was a lot of fun and it was a very valuable experience. And of course it was very different from any of like research group meetings or very sciencey stuff. It was social science at the end of the day, and it was a very sort of creative project, and I'd had a lot of different aspects. And the thing about these science communication internships is that every single one is so unique and so different that you cannot even begin to compare like we just did with our research projects. But my experience was that I did this project and I developed these workshops, so it was kind of my practical part and creative part, but then I also did research on how they were received by the visitors in the exhibition. So I actually interviewed families and transcribed the interviews and did some data analysis. So I also did a research project there, but very, very different from analyzing spectra or simulating anything.
I can imagine, yeah. And in the science communication part of the program, you are with students from other disciplines as well, right? Not only astronomy students, but many different disciplines within the science field.
Yeah, exactly. It's all natural sciences. So I had classes, I think we were about 40 people in my specialization, and it was actually just 4 of us who did astronomy. So we were a bit the minority among the field. Most people did biopharmaceutical sciences or biology, but I thought it was really enriching actually to also have such close contact and work together with students from so many different faculties, because you realize we're all scientists, but we think so differently about things. And it made me think differently about things that I had thought about before, kind of what is science and all these things. So I thought it was really enriching.
Very good, yeah. And then looking at the program as a whole, what do you like about the program, Jasper? I mean, is it very similar to the bachelor? Is it different? Which aspects do you like about the program?
I think the courses itself are very different. They are much harder than the bachelor, I can say. But the way of teaching is really the same. I already talked about open door policy, but you can also ask professors a question in the break between the two parts of the lecture. You can just chat with your friends about what is being talked about, and it's not like that there are so many students in a big lecture hall watching that you are afraid of asking a question or go into the front to ask a question. That's similar to the bachelor and to the master. Although the courses are a bit harder and require, you just need to do your work. There is no skipping a lecture or a tutorial session, because then it will get very hard very fast. So I do not recommend skipping anything or just lying in bed all day and think, oh well, I can skip one day. Astronomy is not a study like that. So in the bachelor maybe you could do that for a day, but in the master I would not recommend it.
Yeah. And for you, Sophie, any particular aspects from the program that you really enjoyed or really liked?
Yeah, well, now that I'm not a student anymore, I really miss it actually, and I was struggling at the end to be like, oh, this is kind of not how I'm going to have my everydays anymore, because what I really enjoyed is, what we kind of talked about in the beginning, that you're really part of a community as well, all throughout, and you have your master offices that you mentioned, and it's really, you go there and you feel like, oh yeah, this is, kind of not like home, because you shouldn't work all the time at home obviously, but it feels comfortable to go there, and it feels like people appreciate you for being there and for your input and all of that. So that's what I really enjoyed about it, kind of the sense of community among the entire observatory and the students, and all of the things like the study associations, and combining the studies with things outside uni, like the old observatory and these things. So that's, I think, what I would say I liked most.
Yeah, very nice. And can you talk a bit about that a bit more, about the social aspects also outside of the study program?
Yeah, so I think what was for me as an international student new here in the Netherlands, maybe just as a Viennese student specifically, was all of the different study and student associations. I was a bit overwhelmed in the beginning by the amount of choice that you have. But I felt that they were really valuable in the sense that you have, for example, like Jasper said in his presentation, associations that are connected to your studies. And so I think that's where a lot of students spend their free time, and you have a bar in the university and you have things that happen at the uni building, so it's easy to work, go to your lectures, and then immediately kind of, you already see your friends, and then together you go to these things, which I, in the beginning, was a bit like, oh, but why would you want to spend your entirety of your 100% of your time just at university? But I think for me it also helped with actually creating a better balance, and it was less like, okay, uni is really stressful work and all of that, but uni is also a place where you have all of these leisure things. And then, of course, I also had friends outside of uni, so balancing that is sometimes a bit tough, kind of the time. But yeah, all people have all of their different associations and roommates that they hang out with. So
very nice.
It's a lot of different aspects, I would say.
Very good. And for you, Jasper, also very much active in study associations as well, right?
So I'm not really active in the study association.
Sorry, student association.
But I'm more active in the student association. So the difference is for the student association, I already showed, for example, the Leidsfles, and you can only join if you're doing astronomy, mathematics, physics, or computer sciences. And for a student association, every student can join. And they are not located in the uni buildings, but they are located in the city center most of the time. Although most of the student associations are Dutch speaking, there are also a couple of English speaking student associations which you can join. So if, for example, if you want to if you come to Leiden, there is an introduction week in the summer. The LSIT, it's called. You can find it on the internet, on the website. And if you take part of the introduction week, you will go by these student associations, which are also open for English-speaking students. And you can also go by the study associations for your own study. But I really like it to connect with students that are doing wildly different studies, like law or history or something like that. There are very new concepts or things you talk about. So I really like that part.
Very good, very good. Yeah. And then, as you were saying, we have for students coming into Leiden, we have the LSIT week. For international students, we also have an orientation week. How was it for you as an international student to apply to the program, but also to come to Leiden to be part of the program here?
Well, I think my experience was a bit different from what new students are going to have, since I started in 2021, which was very much like kind of still COVID and lockdowns. So I was lucky in the sense that the orientation week, the OWL for international students, it was in person, although very kind of limited. But I did meet sort of my core friend group from later on during that week. So I thought it was very valuable just to already, before you start even doing any courses, you kind of already know some faces and you have somebody to sit next to in the first lecture in the lecture hall. And then sort of the start of the studies, as I said, it was a bit difficult because we also had lectures online, and then it was hybrid and not everybody came to uni, just a couple of people, and then it was fully online. So I would rather not really talk a lot about it because it's not going to be just hopefully how it will be for new students. But I think my second year was much easier in the sense, and that's what I saw with new students who started last year as well, that they immediately in the offices, for example, very quickly had a community, and also international students really quickly connected with each other, also through study associations, but also just like that kind of. So I think especially when it comes to international students, I mean, everybody comes alone, or most of the people come alone, so you're very eager to meet new people. So it's really easy to kind of find somebody and be like, hey, want to be friends in a way. Or yeah, I found it was easy. I thought it was easy to connect with people in the beginning and build up a really big network quite quickly.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And Jasper, you were describing that in general during your bachelor's, but also the master's, it's very much an open door policy. You were describing some of the modes of teaching. For you, I can imagine it's more of the same in that sense. But for you, Sophie, how was it as an international student? Do you feel that there were a lot of differences between your bachelor's and the master's in terms of the mode of teaching or the way that we interact with each other?
Yeah, well, I think so. This open door policy is something that is so natural here for everybody, all of the students and all of the teachers. But for me, it was really, I thought it was difficult in the beginning actually to really act on that and be like, oh, hey, I have a question. May I ask? Kind of. So I think it was not something that I was used to. I thought sometimes I found it difficult to kind of distinguish between what is the difference between a master's student and the bachelor student. But I think kind of this openness, and everybody calls professors also by their first names, which for me, from a German university system where it's much more title oriented, kind of was new, and I really appreciated it because it creates less distance and it's very non-hierarchical, which makes it easier to approach senior people, but also makes you feel like you're being taken seriously more easily. Yeah,
but I can imagine it took some time to adjust to that.
Took some overcoming.
I can imagine. Yeah. So we've been talking for some time now, and I think your experiences are super valuable in that sense. But I think it would be good to also look at some of the questions from the audience. So we have a first question that is posted by Ringo Massa, saying that he's from the Netherlands and that he's interested in studying a master in astronomy research, but full-time attendance is not possible. And he's asking, are there any possibilities to study part-time? In principle, we have a full-time program, so the master's program is set up in such a way that we expect students to complete the 120 credit requirement within the 2 years of the program. Of course, there are some ways to, for example, extend the program somewhat, but I can imagine that in many cases it's very difficult to actually study part-time in a sense that you are working a lot of hours per week, for example, besides the study program. But maybe you can share some of your experiences about the whole, the workload of the program, and if you feel that it would be feasible to study part-time in that sense.
Yeah, I think if you may, you can study part-time, but then you just take like 4 years maybe. I don't know if that's possible, but what I'm feeling right now is that part-time studying I would not recommend it personally, because for a research project it is very flexible in the way that your professor or daily supervisor you can just email them or send a message to them and ask, well, can I meet you tomorrow or the day after? But if they do not have time tomorrow, the day after, then you will need to meet the day after tomorrow. And if you're then working, then you cannot do anything for those 3 days if you are very stuck on a very specific problem. And for example, courses are given on specific times, on specific days. I have a course right now, Theory of General Relativity, and we have a lecture on Tuesday and a lecture on Thursday. And I also have a course, Amuse, on computer modeling in astronomy, and those lectures are on Wednesday. And the lectures do not take the whole day, but they take 2 hours, for example, from 11 to 1 p.m. or a.m. in the day, not during the night. And if you work part time, I can imagine your job is not very flexible. So yeah.
No, I think you are focusing on very important aspects in that sense, right? I mean, there is flexibility in choosing which courses you are doing. There is flexibility also in when you will do those courses. So from that perspective, you can actually extend your program to 3 or maybe even 4 years in that sense. But there is not a lot of flexibility in the actual scheduling of the courses or the scheduling of meetings with your supervisors. And especially looking at the research project, a big aspect of course of a research project is that it's not very structured in a sense, but there's a very strict starting date and there's a very strict deadline before which you need to finish, and that makes it very difficult to extend the program for a very much longer duration, and therefore to do the program part-time in the sense that you will, for example, attend 50% of or even less of the program.
May I also add?
Yeah.
I completely agree, and I think also kind of the aspect of part-time doing the program, I think it's the same with any research program, that it's difficult to schedule in when you think about these things, especially research, as you say, there is a strict start and end time, and you're free to choose when you work on your project, which can be handy if you want to do it part-time, but it also kind of runs the risk that you end up not really working on the project and that much, because then you really are occupied with something else that you're working on instead, whereas if you don't have another occupation, then you have more freedom of kind of thought and flexibility and those types of things. So.
Yeah. But do reach out to me if you have any particular questions or specific questions about focusing on the program, not full-time in that sense. So we have a question from Pascal Oichits, asking what are the main differences between the general astronomy track and the cosmology track. Well, I think you already explained that the astronomy research track, because I think that is meant by general astronomy track. It is a program that offers a lot of flexibility and a lot of flexibility and freedom in choosing which courses you want to focus on or which research aspects you want to focus on. And the cosmology track, the cosmology specialization, is actually a prefabricated program in which you have a number of courses within cosmology that you need to complete in the end, and you have some more restrictions on the type of research that you're doing. But the research specialization itself, so the general research specialization itself, offers so much freedom that you can actually choose your courses and your research very much focusing on cosmology, for example. So there doesn't need to be a lot of difference between the general research track and the cosmology specialization, other than the fact that in cosmology specialization you actually have to finish all these cosmology courses and do the cosmology program, project in that sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear. So we get a question from, I'm going to butcher all the names, and I'm very sorry for that. But we have a question from Hilal Finder, asking what type of computational research resources do students have access to? I can tell a lot of things about that, but I think it would be better to actually ask what kind of resources did you use or did you need within the projects that you were doing?
So for the I already talked about the flex offices, and they all have computers. So you can just take a computer in the flex office or hook up your laptop with an HDMI cable to get an extra screen. There are also other computational resources. So if you do a computationally heavy project, which I'm about to do, I'm doing actually, but I'm about to need more computational resources, then there are machines and supercomputers which you can get granted access to run more heavy simulations or data-driven projects you need to do. So there are a lot of computational resources, but I still do recommend in having a laptop with you all the time. And you can also join the observatory, the Sterrenwacht intranet. I don't know if that's an English word. You can SSH in bash to the intranet. So if you have your documents on a uni PC, then you can also access them from home. So
that's kind of also, I only used not actually the Leiden University supercomputer, but of my other professor. He worked at a different university, and I got access to that during my research project.
So the research groups have their own supercomputers as well in that sense, and we have general resources that you can use from that perspective as well. So again, a question from Pascal Ochens, asking what are the most common follow-up steps for students after a master or PhD in astronomy, and more specifically for the science communication track? What are the career aspects? For people studying the masters, I cannot say that much for people graduating after the PhD, but we see in general that people after finishing the masters, we see a lot of students actually going into a PhD. Almost half of the students that finish and that graduate from their masters go into a PhD in astronomy or in physics after graduating. But we also see a lot of the remaining students of the 55-60% of the other students going into jobs within data science or IT-related jobs. Many people go into consultancy or education, also science communication in that sense as well. Maybe we can elaborate a bit more on that in the sense that Sophie, you've just graduated from the science communication specialization. I'm sure that you don't have an entire grasp on all the options in that sense. But
yeah, indeed. So I kind of, at least I see what other fellow graduating students are doing, and indeed I think I have the sense that kind of half do a PhD, and then when it comes to science communication in particular, I think the most common thing is to kind of after graduating work on some shorter term projects here and there, because well, you do the specialization and you do the master, but at least I don't feel like I'm a full-blown professional in the field yet. And so and science communication is in general a field where a lot of jobs are very project-based. Like you do a campaign about communicating a certain science topic or so, and that lasts maybe for 2 years, and then you would work on that. Or on the other hand, you can work in science musea, develop exhibitions or workshops or things like that. But also policy, so kind of go into politics a little bit, which is weird if you think you did a science degree, why would I go into politics? But of course you want to, advise politics with scientific advice. So these types of things, or actually it's a plethora of things that you can do. But more the short-term project side, I would say.
Okay, very nice, thank you.
Yeah.
So then we have a question from Freddie. Saying that yesterday we were advised that it is difficult to find housing in Leiden and that this situation might lead students to defer the starting of the courses. How difficult is this deferring process in astronomy department? Could you point a contact to ask? From that perspective, I can say that it's if you have been accepted to the master's program, but because of housing issues or other issues, you cannot start in the month that you actually initially applied for. For example, if you apply for a September start and got admitted for a September start, but you need to defer to a later stage because of housing issues, it's fairly easy to actually defer your application or your start. For that, you should contact the master ambassador. Sorry, not the master ambassador. Don't want to put this on you. Sorry, the master employee in the educational office by sending an email to master@sdrw.leidenuniv.nl. But once you actually go through the admission process, be admitted, and then have any questions, you are already referred to that point of contact. But it's fairly easy to actually defer your studies to a later start in the program.
There you go. Also from Vienna. I have to look.
So Fira is saying, I'm also from Vienna and I'm looking for house options in Leiden. I want to start my master in September 23rd, 2023. When should I start looking for housing? I think it's September 2024, I hope, at least. But maybe Sophie, as an international, having gone through this process a while ago, but still, what would you recommend?
Well, so I was quite stressed about this as well, as I think a lot of people are, especially if you are not in the country and you have actually no clue of how everybody says it's difficult and start early, but how early is early. So I would recommend there is an international housing office, or there are very, very limited number of apartments for international students. So what I did is I did apply to that actually already in January, I think, because that is first come, first serve, and I already did my application, so I just handed it in. And you have to pay quite a hefty fee for that, but you get it back if you cancel it by June, I think. So I would recommend to just do that, just to kind of have a bit of peace of mind, and that is really as early as possible. They don't give you any indication on how early that is, but what I also did is I kept looking kind of on the side from then on, and then kind of really actively from April on. And then, the problem is that most apartments are for the next month. So what I also would recommend, what I actually did is I already had a room starting from July, so before I actually moved, which may sound stupid, but it actually pays off, because then you have peace of mind, and then you already have something by June. And there's also, most people are looking for something from September on, so there's maybe a higher chance to get something earlier. So that's what I did.
And you had the room from July onwards already. Did you actually come earlier in the before starting the program?
No, in the end not. I came end of August.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of invested in 2 months of rent for
some
peace of mind.
Yes, I can definitely imagine.
It paid off.
Before starting the intensive program in that.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So we have a question from Aileen. Aileen Mills, asking, what was your experience as an international student with finding scholarship covering your tuition?
Good question. Unfortunately, scholarships are, at least from the university, as far as I know, not offered at the moment.
We have a few options, but not many. It's not something that you should expect in that sense.
Indeed. So I do not know which country you're from. It might pay off to look kind of in their outgoing students department or so. I was privileged and lucky enough that I was financially supported by my parents quite a lot. So that was something for me. And I did also work part-time next to the studies, but only for like 10 hours a week. So, but there are also things like student loans, which I was not too excited about tapping into, kind of. I didn't really want to build up a debt, but it is an option that is certainly possible. So it's more, I'm afraid scholarships are not that common, but loans are actually, I think most Dutch students, friends of mine, rely on student loans and things like that.
Yeah, I think for Dutch students it's pretty common, and in that sense there is a big difference also between whether or not you are from a European country, so EER country, or are from a country outside of the EER, in the sense that people from European countries, as you were as well, pay the Dutch tuition fee in that sense as well. But the international students unfortunately have to pay a higher tuition fee. And there also, if we look at the scholarship options, the unfortunately limited scholarship options that are offered by the university, those options actually focus on people from outside of the EER that need to pay the higher tuition fee. So for those students there are scholarship options from the university, but for students from the EER, unfortunately there are not provided by the university at least. So looking at the time, I see that we have very little time left. I'm not entirely sure how many questions we have. I do see one more question on the screen, so I will answer that. And then after that, we might need to close the session. But of course, any questions that you have, we can still answer in the chat and afterwards. This question is from Lasse Eirich. Again, sorry for butchering your names. For the data science track, what is meant by fluency in programming, or in general, what level of programming are required for any astronomy master? So in general, we do expect you to have a background in programming, regardless of which master's program you will do in the end. For the data science specialization, we do expect you to be very proficient in programming, preferably in Python or in C++. But maybe you can share a bit about your experiences in terms of your background in programming and how well that worked out in the master's.
Yeah, so in the bachelor in Leiden, we used Python. Actually, we did everything in Python. So I think if you do a bachelor also in another country that also uses Python or just uses programming in their bachelor, then I think you're good enough to start for the master. And maybe for the data science track, it's of course very heavily programming based. Maybe you could be more proficient, but in my experience, it's a very fast learning curve. You learn it very fast and you do it often, so you learn even faster. That's my experience.
Yeah, you really learn by doing it, by applying it also in your research projects, etc. Right?
Yeah, you can ask other students for help. So that's also something I do very often.
How was that for you, Sophie?
Yeah, I agree. I think the most important thing, at least for me and my non-data science track, was to just feel comfortable with it and not be scared of programming. This sounds like a very basic level now, but essentially, as you say, it is a steep learning curve. So if you kind of know how to look up things and kind of all that, if you're not doing a computationally heavy program, then that's completely fine. For the data science track, I don't have that many experiences, but if you have some prior experience, I think that should be sufficient.
Yeah, I think in that sense the main difference is that for all the astronomy research and non-research specializations, we do expect you to have experience in coding, to at least have done some coding in previous projects that you've done or previous courses that you've done. But you can learn definitely also by doing the courses and the projects here in the master's program. The data science specialization is really focused on students who not necessarily want to learn programming, but are already good at programming, but want to learn very specific data science related aspects. For example, in the field of deep learning or machine learning or reinforcement learning or things like that. So you are already proficient in programming and you want to focus more on the actual data science part of astronomy in that sense. So with that, I think we need to conclude, unfortunately, this session. If you have any more questions, I'm not entirely sure if you can still ask them in the chat, but if you cannot ask them in the chat anymore, you can definitely reach out to either Jasper by sending an email to masterambas at strw.leidenuniv.nl or by sending an email to me directly as a study advisor of the program. And if you don't know who to contact with your specific question, just contact either of us. We have very short lines between us. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for sending in your very interesting questions. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you both a lot for sharing your experiences and sharing the stage in that sense. And we look forward to welcoming you in Leiden in the near future. Thank you.